I did a review of these, well, not a review, but an unboxing of these acrylic painter pens in my last video, and I thought I would use it in application in a scene here and give it a try. So I thought I'd do just a quick scene here. Snowy covered bridge right here, and we'll do some sky. Just, you know, I'm doing just a composition as an excuse to use this, so I'm going to do some darker tones down here. And the white pen, I mean, of course, it's great for any kind of white lighting embellishments, but it's also really great for things like snow when snow falls. So let's do a scene that's kind of conducive to that look, or that usage. And let's see where it goes. Alright, so there's the snowy covered bridge. I did it really low in the composition so I could leave more room for sky. Okay, you do it up higher, you have, you know, a more road side, foreground and whatnot to apply, but on a quarter size piece of paper right here, we're going to focus more on the sky here. So, okay. On this one right here, I'm going to use, on the scene right here, I'm going to do some clouds behind here. Now this is one instance when you do have to do some masking if you have something behind this object, but my masking is really quite minimal. And I'm not going to be too careful about it. I'll be careful enough, but you know, my masking needs, as far as the usage of this entire series of stamps, is really quite minimal for a reason, and that's that I don't really care for doing I don't like stopping a lot in my process to get to my I don't know, next step, okay, along the way. So I designed the stamps so that there's really very minimal instances where you might have to, you know, stop your process to do some sort of, I don't know, I think it's kind of tedium in a way to cut out masks and things like that, so I keep it quite easy. That's for myself and other users of the line, okay? Now, I mean, I might overmask sometimes using this paper towel method. Sometimes I'll undermask, okay? But again, that doesn't really matter to me because I usually run in additional tones anyways. So a little bit of overstamping or over-masking or under-masking is not going to matter. Okay, now on the cloud cumulus right here, oops. One thing I didn't mention was, you might have seen me kind of wipe off some of my edge here, okay? So that's so that it stamps out drier on the perimeter, and thus it'll stamp out lighter on the perimeter, okay? Because the drier the ink, the lighter the impression, okay? Alright, so I'm overlapping my previous cloud, overlapping my mask, of course, alright? We have something like that. Alright, now you can see over here I got pretty close to that. On this side I undermasked a little bit so you get a little bit of this halo, but I'm going to be running in some colors in here anyway. Alright, that's not the end product, so that's what I mean about not really worrying about overmasking or undermasking. On this one right here I did go into, I probably stamped onto my rooftop a little bit too, but it's really not going to matter. All your tone, now, I mean, if I missed by a half an inch or so, I might fill in with an additional impression or something like that. But otherwise, don't even worry about it. You're going to be filling in with additional tone, and that fills in those gaps. And if you overstamp onto your object too, that's when we have this white pen. You know, that white pen can go back in and reclaim your lighter areas as well. Alright, so this is going to be just a cool winter scene, so let's take a look. I'm going to be using my Colorbox Stylus tool. You can use all kinds of other things on this. This is one of your first videos you've seen of mine. I'll just reiterate, you can use practically anything. Okay, I'll use some of my Stylus tool. It's a very comfortable tool, but I'll work through a range of blue tones, blue values, okay, starting with my lightest tones, okay? So, like I said, if you don't have some sort of sponge applicator, you can always just take like a paper towel like that, okay? And you can just start applying your inks this way. I think my summer sky is a little bit dry here, my pad. It could be that it's just really cold out, I'm not sure. Let me see, I have a re-inker for this somewhere. That's always the last one I check. Okay. Alright. Just take it like that. Alright, now watch this. Now I'm going to come into my clouds a little bit, just to kind of merge things, okay? It's not going to happen with your first color. I need to work up to that color that I stamped my clouds in, okay? But you work it up through your lighter tones, and that way you can really control your lighting scheme, okay? And what I mean by that, your lighting scheme is just the area that you choose to remain light in a scene. So you can see some areas of my cloud I'm not going over. I'm leaving them just the white of the cardstock. Okay. By the way, this is glossy cardstock that I'm using. Okay, now snow is really reflective. I was about to say material, a substance, okay? So I'm leaving a lot of this terrain down here, just light in value, so I won't go over it too much, but like I said, on my covered bridge, I will apply some tone, like on the interior in there, and on the vertical sides, okay? When I do that, and when I leave my rooftop a little bit lighter, it looks a little bit more three-dimensional that way. See, because it's being top lit. Alright, now this is going to be a nighttime scene, so I don't know if there'd be that much lighting in here, so you can kind of come in here and, you know, bring some of this lightest tone into it. It doesn't have to be summer sky, it could just be any light blue, and again, this is a dye-based ink, okay? It's not like a pigment or a you know, an oxide or an alcohol ink, although you can use those for different effects. It's just a different look and different medium, okay? It might be a different technique in terms of your color applications and the end results. You can't expect to use colored pencils and get the same results as, like, you know, oil paints or something like that. So, But you can apply these same kind of principles in terms of lighting and toning and everything like that using your different media out there. And you might use a different surface, of course, you know, something like pastels. Colored pencils aren't going to stick to glossy cardstock, you know, like this one, because there isn't enough tooth to it, okay? All right, so anyways, you saw me do that with just the paper towel. So you can achieve really similar results, you know, using different types of applicators. You can use makeshift applicators, okay? You can use a piece of, like a rag maybe, you know. I would recommend something that doesn't have too much texture, but if you want to get some different looks, maybe you do apply some different textures, I don't know. Okay, now this is Bahama Blue, so we're getting a little bit darker. I'm going to leave some kind of lighter areas in the sky, so I'm going for kind of a more streaky look. As I apply this, what I'm doing is I'm kind of staying in one little area, okay? I'm not doing this all over the card. If you notice, I just work one little area like this at a time, okay? That way I get this nice tapered look. What I'm doing is I'm going like this. And see how that starts with this darker end, and it kind of ends in this nice kind of tapered lighter mark. And that's the mark that I'm using a lot of times, okay? When I'm doing it with a sponge applicator like this, I might not do it the whole thing like that, okay? I'm using more of like an angle like this, okay? So I'm using the edge of it, and I'm just staying in that one area so I get that nice transition, okay? When people start going like this, they get impatient, okay? And then you get the shape of your applicator, your whatever you're using, okay? So just stay in one little area. It's like you're applying, you know, powder or something like that, or something to something, or if someone was applying makeup or something like that, okay? I always say, if you're kind of doing makeup on a child's face for Halloween or something like that, you know, you're not just going like this everywhere, you know, you're kind of applying it little by little in an area, okay? And I say a child's face just so they know kind of the pressure. You're not going to press into it, or a lot of times people get impatient with this technique. They go like this, and there's such a, you know, a faint mark, okay, like that. So they go like, they press harder, and what it ends up doing is it gets the shape of your applicator much more prominent, which might not be desired. Or if it's something like these tips right here, they rip their tips like that, okay? And I don't know, over time, you know, these tips do become delaminated at some point in time, but I got that on a few of mine, but my tips are, I don't know, I probably have had 15 years of use out of every tip, okay? And I don't rip mine, so you can glue them back on. I haven't glued mine on because I have so many, but I am starting to save my tips now that Clear Snap is no longer in business. That's the manufacturer for these tips right here. But anyways, if you go back to your makeshift applicator, that's perfectly suitable for this. You know, it's like finger paint or something like that. I get ink all over my fingers when I do this, but it's not a bad choice. Some people are asking me about, well, have you found an alternative, being that Clear Snap isn't making these anymore? And you know, this is going way back for me in terms of things that I used to use before the you know, different accessories came out and kind of real convenient types of tools, but this isn't really a bad choice at all, okay? And certainly everyone has access to things like this, be it a napkin or, you know, a rag maybe, you know, an old soft shirt, you know, or something like that, a towel maybe, I don't know. But see that? It's a pretty good choice. What happens to me is when I get into my darker tones, sometimes using something like this that's a little bit flatter and denser, when I get into some of my darker tones, sometimes it doing that kind of wiping thing without having kind of a more absorbent sponge like this, I can't apply as much of that ink down here, because when I start to get a little bit of a buildup, if I'm going like this with a paper towel, it's almost like I'm wiping ink off of my surface as opposed to applying it to the surface. Okay, and that just means that you're achieving an adequate amount of ink for this type of look right here. I need to get back into my mood and media series. Okay, that's a series of these videos where I'm doing the same composition in every one of them, using the same stamps, but I'm doing them in different media, different techniques to achieve different looks. A lot of people have come to associate either Stampscapes or scenic stamping in general with a technique, but you know, you can do the same scene here using anything. I could do this same composition on, I don't know, a dark matte paper but all the images are stamped and embossed in silver, you know, and that's a completely different look. It's almost the opposite, you know, it's like a reverse image, you know. But perfectly, you know, good way to do it. And I don't know, it's great for things like Christmas cards, you know, if you don't want to apply all these different types of inks and colors and whatnot. It could be just this quick embossing type of process, and you can get a lot of them made. Silver and on like things like blue, dark blue papers really look cool for you know, a holiday card composition. Anyways, there's your Danube blue. Now, the color that I stamped my clouds out in was the Marvy blue. It's a little bit darker than Danube. They really look similar, you know, in terms of the you know, the sticker and case of this Marvy pad, but the Marvy ink's a little bit darker. I'm really surprised at my inks right here. It's not freezing cold in my house right now, but temperatures have fallen this time of year, and outside temps right now are about 30-something, which is cold for here. I know it's not cold for, you know, Maine, but I can feel the viscosity of the ink here is different than, you know, when the temperatures, like inside the house, are 10 degrees warmer, 20 degrees, whatever. It's really interesting. I was out in Arizona at a convention, and when was that? That was last month. Boy, it seems like longer than that. I don't know, it was really arid out there, and you can really feel the difference in your ink application because everything was drying so fast. So things are a little bit different no matter where you are. Relative humidity, whatnot. Okay, let's go for something a little bit, I want to bump this up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go with some re-inker fluid. It's a good way to work this type of technique right here, is just to take your re-inker fluids on your applicators and just to apply your ink at a faster rate. This is Mermaid Lagoon. I don't even have the pad for this one. I've mentioned in other videos. With a lot of the inks that I'm getting these days, because I want a decent collection of a lot of colors that I don't have, okay? But I buy my inks just like anyone else, okay? And I figured that if I'm not going to be stamping out something in a given color, then I might as well just get the reinker and not the pad. I don't need both, really. Because if I'm just using the color for ink application like this and using an applicator, I don't really need the pad. Pads are fun to have and everything like that too, and they're very convenient. You just pop it open, but it's also very convenient just to take this bottle and put a couple drops down there and just go like that. That doesn't take a lot longer than getting a pad like this and opening it up and, you know, applying it that way. And I just leave my reinkers on my desk. You know, my work area right in front of me, like that. It's ready to go. This is a Blueprint Sketch Distress ink, right? Really great color. Super dark. I have to kind of, it almost doesn't relate to blue. It's kind of a purple blue or something like that, and it really does look kind of like a blueprint color scheme. I love old, I don't know, do they, I guess they still use blueprints, but I used to go to this place called Huntington Beach it wasn't I already forgot the name of it. But it's this place in Huntington Beach that they used to do, where I used to live, where they did a lot of blueprint things. God, there were people going in there all the time. They did typesetting and all those types of graphic work. These days it's all digital and people print things out at home. Used to get what they call the stat. What was that? What did that stand for? You? I don't know. Submitting advertisements to different publications. You had to get a stat made. God, I forgot what that stood for. Anyways, you can see this being applied. So if you want your lighter areas to remain light, you really have to be careful about it with your darker tones like this. And because I have so much ink already laid down on here, the pulp of the paper is starting to, or has achieved, kind of super saturation. So that when I'm applying this, not a lot is being transferred over to the paper because it's kind of sitting on top of the paper like this. You can see it where I can apply it like this. And it just kind of wipes right off, so be careful when you get into your darker tones like that. Alright, I'm going a little bit darker because I want that, you know, my pen marks, you know, the reason for this video here, I want those to really stand out a little bit more in terms of contrast. The darker you make your background, the lighter, or the more, well, the lighter a white pen will stand out in contrast. So, but that being said, be careful to retain the light areas of your piece if you want those to remain light. Okay, that's where a lot of people, you know, when they're doing lighting and kind of getting into scenic stamping and they're depicting lighting, it's really easy for them to, you know, retain, you know, your lighter areas after their first color. But sometimes in the darker tones, when your page starts to get a little bit wet, sometimes that's where they go over all those light areas, you know, with your darker tones, medium and darker tones. So just remember, if you want the depiction of light to be present in your scene, just remember that to not tone everything out with your darker colors. Okay. All right, that was Blueprint Sketch. Love that color. And let's go right on into black. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to use my same applicator when you're working in through values of the same hue. Okay, in this case, light blue, medium blue, dark blue. You know, you can just go in straight into your next color without having to clean off your tip here. Now if I go with the black here and I think, oh, you know what, I should have used a little bit more of that lighter blue. Of course I need to wash this off if I'm going to be using that tip again, you know, before you go back into your lighter colors again. Okay. Alright, this is black. I stamped out my imagery down here in black. I'm using the same color. So black's not really a color, but the same ink. Okay, see I'm putting some of this onto my vertical edge like that. In the design itself, which is done with little dots like that, I have designed the stamp with shading inherent in it, okay? And what you're doing is when you color it, you just reiterate that shading scheme with some additional ink like that. So it doesn't have to be a mystery as far as where, you can apply some shadows. You can start off and just look at the design and see where there's some darker tones as defined by the use of dots. They call it stippling. Okay, like that. You don't always have to do nighttime scenes. Yeah, I don't know, I tend to go a little bit darker, especially if I'm going to be doing a lot of embellishment work with things like gel pens and whatnot. I have these white paint pens here. They're acrylic paint, which I find kind of fascinating that it's acrylic. I don't know what kind of solution they're using to keep it, moist and whatnot. Some kind of thing that'll be anti-drying, but it'll dry it fast enough to where it's not wet forever. Okay, so that was some blue tones. You can always use things like alcohol markers too in your blue color scheme. So let's say like this one right here. Let me see. Let me go a little bit lighter. If you have kind of a good range of alcohol pens, and you can do that these days very inexpensively. This pen right here comes in a set of 88, and it's less than 50 cents per pen. All right. It's not bad, deal at all. But I don't know. If you like some kind of some of the more expensive brands, probably better quality too. You can supplement, a big set of pens like that. $40 for 88 pens with some, your favorite colors from those other brands and whatnot. Okay, so this is a really, really pale blue. Okay, the Marvy Le Plumes are more than 50 cents each, but they're like $1 or something like that. But you can go in here just like we did with your tones on the outside. We start light and then work into your darker tones. So something like this, I can just kind of go in and supplement and get some of these more finer areas using pens, right? This little tip right here is going to be more conducive to detail than, something like a wide applicator, or wider than like a foam tip like that, or certainly, your, I don't know, where is that? Here we go. Paper towel like that. So I guess you can wad this up like this and, go for a little narrow area too. Make do, with what you have if you don't have certain things. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it, but colored pencils on glossy cardstock. I tested it, and if you have some colored pencils that are soft enough, I can put marks on there, and it showed up, okay? But on little fine points, like these little shaded areas in here, I can kind of come in here like that. Okay, I'm using glossy here, so what I do is I go in like that, and then I can just kind of go in with my lighter one, and I blend out that darker touch like that. Because alcohol markers tend to go back into solution. That's why you have those blender pens. Glossy cardstock's not the ideal cardstock to blending, because the cardstock does absorb that ink, but it's not too bad. Alright, this is pastel blue. Going in here and just kind of supplementing it. Just kind of makes a little bit richer some of those areas, and in a more detailed area I can put a little bit of shading underneath this covered bridge. I can put in some shadows under the eaves like this. Okay. It's subtle because this color right here isn't you know, it's pastel blue, so it's not super dark. So I can start off with this lighter one, see how it looks. If I would need to go darker, then I can go darker, but I like working through my value scheme to get to that color. See, like this, I can work around that little window in there. I can put a little bit of shading within that covered bridge. I can barely, this pale blue right here is so light blue. Let me try this one right here. This is azure blue. A little bit of a different one. The other pastel blue right here is a little bit more of a warmer blue. Kind of go down in the direction of that wood grain. This azure blue, it's more of a neutral blue. It's kind of a cooler blue, I guess. Sometimes I forget about using my pens. I'll get done with a video and I'll think, oh, I should have used a little bit of pen highlighting or something like that. Or pen shading. So I guess I could put this in certain areas around in the clouds too. See that right there? I mean, I missed on my... That cloud didn't get right next to my rooftop right there, but I don't know. I don't miss that, okay? I think it looks fine without it. It's that little bit of lighting in my clouds like that, where I've just retained the white of the paper, and kind of a small area. Some of these planks of wood are a little bit of a different hue or something like that. They've aged differently, so you can kind of color in your little planks like that. You can do the wood grain, you know, browns and whatnot. It doesn't have to all be blue. My thoughts are generally, you know, at nighttime you don't really see colors, you know, with the you know, the moonlight or whatnot. But you can certainly do different colors on that, if you so choose. Okay, this is a sky blue. Things just look a little bit more, the forms seem a little bit more rounded when you define things with some extra shadow, okay? And like I said, you don't have to invent your shadows, you certainly could. I'm just kind of following along some areas in the design that are darker, okay? But it doesn't mean you have to use black to do shadows. Shadows are usually just darker versions of the color of that given object, okay? Like my folds in my jacket right here, you know. Some of it's pretty dark, but, you know, it's just lighter versions of blue and darker versions of that same color, right? You can look at this bottle right here, okay? This red right here is not a different color plastic than the highlights on it, okay? So it's just darker versions of it. So you just go with your same color, but just a darker version of it. A lot of times people think when they're drawing they have to go with shadows are black, you know, but that's kind of something in theory or something. It's not visual, okay? There could be black shadows, yeah. You know, it's the absence of light, but it's usually just darker versions of it. So that's what I'm working right here. And that's, you know, see, it just makes these... focus in here. It just kind of makes the object here, this stamp, seem a little bit more three-dimensional, and the forms in here more dimensional. Even like these little rocks down here. See these little rocks in here? One of the things that are really, it's a kind of a fine detail. And this is really fun to do. I don't see this as tedium at all. You can go into those little areas. Let me try this one right here. So I think this is the azure. Yeah, you can just go and you can give these little rocks a little bit of a shadow down here, like that. Okay, maybe the azure's a little bit too light, but well, maybe put the azure in the lighter area right in here, but that azure right here isn't very much darker than that given color, so I could start it off with that color and then try out a little bit of a darker one after that. So you can use various values like that to really kind of enhance and expand on the kind of the visual language that's taking place in kind of some of the tiniest of details, or detailed areas, okay? Alright, so anyways, you get a little bit of variation right down in here, even. Okay? Okay, now here's something that I was looking at here. Sometimes going with a little bit of temperature changes in a scene is really fun. It's an all cool color scheme right here, right? Just blues and variations of blue, but sometimes you can go in here and just to kind of tweak the temperature scheme a touch. And this is why you leave some areas light like that, or white. This is a apricot, okay? But just kind of coming in here a little bit and bringing a little bit of temperature into the mix. This is where pens really come in handy too. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that right there. But see that little bit of a temperature change? I don't know if it changes the spirit of it. It certainly does something. It expands on your temperature range. Now that you had something on the cool spectrum right here. Now you have something on the warm spectrum. It's not real hot, you know. If this is a sliding scale and this is neutral, and this is really hot over here, oranges, reds, you know, golds, whatever. It's probably just going a little bit into that warm temperature range down here in just the most subtle way possible, right? And that's with the most pale version of a warm tone. You can use green or something like that. You know, a really light, pale green or something. But that's just like that little beige, but it kind of stands out to me a little bit. And is certainly fun to do. And it certainly doesn't make a gigantic commitment to it if you're not sure about it. You know, just going with something as pale as that, you know, tone right there is certainly easy to do. You can really change your color schemes around when you're doing like the palest of values to depict that temperature. Okay, so I'm shaking up this pen right here. These acrylic painters are one of those things that has that little ball inside. It sounds like a plastic ball to me. It doesn't sound like a metal one, so I don't know. It would have to be a really dense little plastic ball because it has to be... I'm guessing it's metal, I don't know. Because it has to shake around in there. It's shaking up your kind of binder and paint. And the more you shake this up, presumably, the more of that binder gets mixed in with the paint so that you will get that nice kind of a slightly more opaque application of this medium. Okay. This is one of those things that has that little plastic tip right here, unlike a gel pen roller where, you know, you can put little dots like that with the gel pen, but occasionally you have to get that ball rolling, okay? On this one it's just more like your gold and silver pens that probably you have in your collection. Okay, let's see how this goes right here. Let's bring this down a little bit. I like to go in and I make all my designs textural, but I like to add additional texture, if possible, with things like this paint pen. There's all kinds of pens like these being sold online. There were numerous ones of this type, and I was guessing they all come out of the same factory somewhere in China, because the mechanism looked the same, but the branding was all different. So I'm guessing it's all out of the same factory. They're just branded differently. Someone places a minimum order. You probably have to buy, I don't know, 10, 20,000 units of it, and you can put your own name on it or whatever, or they'll package it up with your labeling if you want to, or maybe they come up with your labeling for you. All this centralized kind of manufacturing is pretty crazy these days. It's all branding. Okay, so see this right here where I've done my highlighting, my shading on here. I'm doing the opposite. On my highlighting, I'm just kind of going along the lighter portions and where I've colored in some of the lighter portions. Which would be the opposite side of the shade. Okay, see down here I've kind of gone in with my shading. See those darker little dots right there to depict shadow? I added more darker tone like that, right? But you can see right here on the edge of that I'm depicting highlighting, so I'm just kind of tapering that off like that. So I've tapered this way with the shadow and tapering this way with the light. So as it moves from here down here, you just spread your dots out a little bit more, because I'm not working with different values of white, so I have to kind of just spread them out a little bit more like that, and that tapers those off. Okay, I've put some on my road right here too. Kind of use some right here. It's kind of you put those little sparkly starlight or moonlight on the road like this. You kind of have it come all the way down to the bottom like this. It kind of creates a visual lead-in to the scene. It's like this magical, sparkling little kind of surface right here. My camera doesn't focus fast anymore. So this right here, if you kind of have this visual lead-in, it's just kind of this little magical pathway that leads you right into there. It has a different spirit though, don't you think, with these little white dots like that? I'd really encourage both shading and highlighting, okay? And highlighting and shading can be very easy. Highlighting is not easy if you don't retain some kind of lighter things within your scene. You have to retain some white somewhere because you're saying that white light is hitting, some areas within the scene. And that's where this white little pen comes into play. Okay, going on top of my rooftop here, right here I can even tone, go over that outline of the rooftop right there and get rid of that outline. Like so. Like that. See, it's no longer an outline, just that top roof, like that. A little bit of snow on the side of the roof. Like so. Now this pen is working really good. I tested it before and I speculated that it would become more and more opaque the more I used it, because I'd be shaking it up more every time I used it. So I do feel that the opacity has increased from my last, initial unboxing video, and it looks pretty good. I think it's a little bit more opaque than my white gel pen, at least the ones I have. Okay, so let's see right here. I have a quote stamp right here. Starlight, Starbright, first star I see tonight. I was thinking about doing a... Now this is a 0.7 millimeter paint pen, but I don't think I can get a varied line. I mean, I can get a little bit like that, you know, if I was writing or something like that, but I don't think I can get as narrow of a line as my .7 gel pen. And this is what I've been using a lot to do my little star. Let me see if I can get it again. My second one was better than my first. I've done this on a couple recent videos. My first one looked a little bit feeble. But let me see if I can get this right here. Kind of a North Star type of thing going on. So I'm going to start off with a little dot right here, okay? And then what I do is I do backstrokes like this, okay? I don't do a stroke like this and just come up. I'm going for more of a that type of thing where it's a little bit more tapered, okay? So don't just go like that and then come up, otherwise it's going to be a completely uniform line. Alright, so I'll start off like this, and I'll do a little, you can do it multiple passes like this too, okay? And come in like this, start off with that little dot, and like that. See that right there? It's a little bit more tapered. Come in like this. 4-point star like that, and then I'll do my intermediate ones like this, and I'll go a little bit shorter, okay? Kind of like so. And then we have our nice star right there. Kind of a little twinkly, right? And I did that with the Uniball Signo gel pen. I think I can get a little bit more narrow that way. Alright, so I have a quote right here for Starlight, Star Bright, First Star I See Tonight. I don't know if I just want that one star, though, okay? I'm going to put... Oh, I didn't realize this cap does go on the back like this. Good. Though I don't lose my caps right here. I don't know, maybe that will be the only star that I put in there. It would seem fitting for this quote stamp right there. So what I'll do, but I want to do some extra paint pen work here, so I'll have this. Now see, if I did just this like that, that would depict stars, right? Additional stars. But what I'll do is when I do this and I put it in front of my clouds like this, and road like that, and all of my objects, then to me it can kind of depict snowfall, okay? It kind of like puts another layer of texture over your scene like that. You can even do like that little, I don't know, I think it's like Charlie Brownish kind of little things you can taper off a little, you know, little things so that it looks like it's dropping down like that. I don't know if I'll do that. Maybe. Okay. Let's see. I need my Brilliance pigment ink. It's a little bit more opaque and fast drying than, say, something like a Hero Arts white pigment ink. Alright, so let's see if I can get a good impression of my quote stamp here, using the Brilliance ink over the top of this. Alright, let me go for a test impression here. I don't use positioners and things like that. I mean, I certainly could, and it's a good idea, but I don't. Maybe I should. But when doing word stamps like that, sometimes I do go for these impressions like this, because it gives me a little bit of a practice thing about where to put my pressure on these. And it also tests for the ink evenness. Make sure that your ink is spread nice and even. and that your ink isn't kind of more, wetter, like in one area than the other. So sometimes it would, you get more of an impression of. You need these things to stamp out nice and evenly, right? Your quote stamps. Let's see, where do I want to put this? I think there's a couple good areas. Well, right here. Those are the darkest areas, so maybe I'll go down right here. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be perfectly even or straight, but if it isn't, so be it. Okay, nice, even, adequate pressure. I pressed a little bit harder, but Starlight, Starbright, first star I see tonight. I was stamping on a dry matte paper, and this one's kind of a moist, glossy paper, so when I went down, I don't know, I felt it kind of move a little bit, and it's this like thick pigment ink. Pigment ink's like paint, so I don't know. Just be careful that when you go down there, you don't squeeze into it too bad. It's not too bad. Okay, so you're kidding me. Where did I just put my white pen? Oh, okay, I put it back over here. All right, so I see that Starlight, Starbright, like that. I'm going to come in here. I think I am going to do that. I wanted to see what that lettering would look like. And I'm going to add in my little snowfall trails to some of these. Oh, I can get a really tiny little dot using these pens. I just kind of just touch the paper a little bit more. See those like that? I won't do that on all of them. Be a little bit overkill, but and maybe kind of put a few and taper it off a little bit. It kind of gives a little bit of a whimsical touch. I don't know. It's like a Charlie Brown, type of little snowfall type of thing going on. Which I've been watching a lot of every year. Charlie Brown Christmas and whatnot. It's kind of tradition. I love the music in that one. I tell you what, let me put one of these little snowfalls. I'll have it coming in front of my word stamp. Okay, so you have this little snowfall happening there, kind of whimsical in appearance. Alright, so I have a lot of texture happening in here. I'm going to store my pens on their side like this, being that they're paint pens. This came in a 6-pack, so inexpensive. Actually an 8-pack. There's 6 white pens and 2 black ones. I guess they don't sell them individually because it would be like a $1 pen. I don't know, something like that. It's probably not even worth their time to sell like that. So they sell them these multi-packs. I don't know if I need 6. I hope I don't. I hope they don't figure it's going to go dry on me. I'm going to put a few little highlights on some of these clouds in here. As I put my hand like that, I can feel that stickiness of the alcohol ink, where it's kind of built up and it hasn't dried completely, or I don't know. It's dry to the touch, but it's just a little tacky. See this right here on the top, kind of tufts of those little clouds back here? Doesn't it kind of lend itself to the overall kind of look of the piece? Okay, so that was that type of texture right there. Let's move into our pigment ink. But let's switch from the Brilliance to just a regular pigment ink. I say regular because most inks are of this chemistry right here. The Brilliance ones are just known to dry on a glossy cardstock. Or they just dry faster if it's on matte cardstock too. So the Brilliance ones, I don't really know if you can emboss with those ones. I wouldn't think that you can just because they dry so fast. But this one right here, I'm going for a slower drying ink. Okay. This is just the Hero Arts Unicorn. Okay, so let's add a little bit of kind of a light mist. This is a very dry touch, okay? Barely any is applying with each tap, and I'm tapping extremely lightly so that I'm barely applying any with each tap right here. Don't get impatient, go like that. Otherwise you're going to get a big blob, right? So look at that little glow right there and what that really did to that start. Isn't that fun? And it also kind of, it kind of hides my kind of deficiencies, you know, in terms of drawing that little star right there, all the irregularities that happened during my little star creation right there, kind of, you know, I wouldn't say they disappear, but I kind of bury them a little bit with texture. Okay, so I like a lot of texture in my scenes. I like a real soft looking texture, and being that I've retained some of that area of white, I can put some of this mist in the air, this white thin layer of pigment ink, because what this is depicting is it's saying that there's light hitting, white light hitting this area, and there's moisture in the air, and it's becoming illuminated, right? That's what kind of fog or mist is. When we can see it, when it's visible, we're saying that there's moisture in the air, and it's being illuminated by the lighting hitting it. So that's why we retained some of that white down there. Now I'm applying a little bit too much, so I have to kind of remove some of it, and that's what you're all going to do if you try this for the first time. We all apply too much white ink. Sometimes it's like this, and then we apply it in here and it's a blob of paint, so you really have to kind of blot it off a little bit, especially if your pigment ink pads are kind of as wet as mine. This one's I say this is relatively new. I've had it for over a year now, I think. But on some of my other pigment ink pads that are still wet, you know, some of my pigment ink pads are probably over 10 years old, and they're still juicy. It depends on what area you're in, you know, but the more arid, the faster drying your inks are going to be, even sitting around in storage, not even just from usage. I'm talking to all of you out in Arizona, maybe New Mexico and Utah, I don't know, Nevada, in the Sahara. I don't think there's anyone in the Sahara. But so just be careful about the amount of ink that you're applying, okay? You kind of want to go with a very dry brush application. Now I'm going, you know, with this one inking right here, I can just go right in here, and there's barely any ink on my Q-tip right here, so I can apply it pretty freely, but right after I re-ink it, just be careful, you know, when you go back in here. You know, if you apply too much, just kind of dab it off, or, you know, if you don't like it at all, just wipe it off. A lot of people, when they get the feel of this, they just start applying it. Sometimes they apply it everywhere. I'm kind of doing it where I'm oscillating a little bit of usage, like this, okay, and then I leave an area that's untouched, okay. I think that's kind of a real effective usage of it, rather than just applying it everywhere. And this tends to look really good where light meets dark, okay? Doesn't mean you have to apply it everywhere, okay? But it is a really fun texture to apply to a piece. It's one of those few instances in rubber stamping where you can have this real soft element when we're stamping up any type of stamp, an image. We're going for crisp impressions, but sometimes you can really enhance that texture of crisp with a little element of soft, visual softness to extend your textural range. But anyways, you can see that right down here. See where I've kind of added some of it in the snow down here. See that illumination happening? It's a real soft illumination, right? Down here on my road. Even back here, see in the back of that, I put some of that texture there, so instead of there's this wall of darkness, we have some of that mist kind of creeping in from back there. It's being illuminated by, you know, those clouds back there, so you have this mist kind of coming in here. It looks a little bit more three-dimensional too when you have things like this. You know, this lighting kind of enveloping some areas or creeping in through. Yeah, it just, everything looks a little bit more, I don't know, realized, kind of fully realized when you do things like this. And you don't have to do a ton of it, you know, but if you add a little bit here and there, if you have a word stamp, you can kind of illuminate, not this one right here, but if I did it in dark over white or something like that, you can, if you had a star up here, you can kind of illuminate part of your words stamp, and you can say that it's kind of a, you know, the word stamps are being affected and influenced by your scene, you know, your card lighting. It doesn't have to be a scene. Okay, you see that little kind of, it's kind of little, some magical looking piece. I mean, down here we just used one stamp, but look how full you can really make that just by playing around with textures. You know, your crisp textures in the form of the white paint pen, and the textures in terms of little pigment ink, like so. Okay, all right. Now, let me see something right here. I think I'm going to add a little bit more depth to my scene. Let me just go with a couple stamps that are just on my desk right here. Let's go for this one. This is called Winter Brush. It's just a leafless little bush right here. I'll put this right here in the foreground. I'm using the Versafine black pigment ink, right? Versafine gives you that real fine, crisp impression. It's very dark too, but see that right there? Kind of gives it a little bit more dimension. And this area up here I think looks fine, but let's come into that with my oak branch, I think. Okay. No, there wouldn't be leaves, but I don't know. I just happen to have this one right on my desk right here, so you know, they would have fallen off maybe by now. But I could use a dye-based black ink right here, but if you have the Versafine and you're not going to do any more color applications or something like that, Versafine's a really great choice because it is so dark and really lends itself to a lot of dimension. Let me go with another little piece right here. See, this is a big stamp right here, but you don't have to use the whole thing. It's been designed to where each little portion is interesting and has its own density, so it's denser over here if you want a denser, stronger impression, or this, it's lighter out here. Sorry, it's lighter out here on the perimeter on that side if you want kind of a lighter impression of it. But see this right here? I put that branch right next to it, and I think they play off each other like that. So the star looks lighter by contrast, having something so dark right next to it, in other words. And also, I don't know, now it kind of caps off this composition a little bit too. It was open up there, and when you have something over the top of it, it kind of contains your composition a little bit more than having it kind of open. You know, one thing that would be really interesting in something like this too is if you took something like this and you stamped it out. You can do it, stamp it out there in a regular pigment ink, and you can emboss these branches right here where they're actually dimensional. Same thing with the branch down here. So the things that are closest to us, I don't do enough of that. I need to get into embossing, because I always say that. Or if this got really dark too, you can emboss a branch in silver or something like that, you know, for this kind of holiday looking card. It's just a winter card, but it, you know, could be holiday or two, you know, something like that too. But anyway, yeah, I think that those foreground images, those two foreground images really kind of, I don't know, pushed the composition a little bit further in terms of, I don't know, a complete look, don't you think? You can go in here and put a little snow or something like that, or crystal, you know, crystalline look with the pen here. I think I'm just going to leave it as is, though, you know, instead of doing those little highlights on there. But I think this pen worked really great. I'm certainly happy with the purchase at this point in time. What I don't want to see from my media that I buy, I don't want these things to start breaking down after a year, so I'm going to have to, you know, kind of watch this and see how it works over time. These ones have the feel of this older Pen Touch, I think it was by Sakura, their white paint pens. It has a similar feel to those pens to me, but with a little bit more of a little bit more opacity to the application. Okay, I'm still looking around for this one pen that I used to use. It was a white paint pen, and it had a real kind of glossy looking dot, but it was really, really opaque. Now these ones right here are somewhat opaque. They're a little bit more translucent. That's not a real white, like that's white right there, but this other pen that I used to use was really, it was like that white when I applied it down. It's not bad. I mean, having these kind of more translucent or close to opaque kind of marks on there, it kind of merges in with the background, so the colors underneath are going to show through. So if I was doing that dot over the red or something like that, it would probably have a slight pinkish tinge to it, just because of the that translucency. But it's nice to have kind of variations on that. So I'd like to have kind of translucent, slightly more opaque, and very opaque media for doing these types of little touches right here, because I can incorporate all of those different types of looks into it. Sometimes you put a dot out here and it's just too white, so you can use one of those that are much more translucent, so that it gives you that type of texture, but without the contrast that completely opaque one would provide. So anyways, pretty fun way to go. Like I said, these pens, there's so many of them, and this one's Miaosun. That's, I don't know how you pronounce that, but pretty good way to go. And I don't know, this one just had a close to 5-star rating out of 5, and plenty of reviews, I think. And I think they were all the same make, just different brands or whatever. So you might want to look into something like that. And there's certainly, you know, it's not price prohibitive, you know, you can get several of these for really reasonable price. And I say that because, I mean, some of those pens that I used to buy were, you know, 4 times the price or something like that than what these ones end up being per piece, you know, when you divide it up. And the thing, I have no idea what I'll use the black one for. I'll probably come up with something for that. But anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. And hope you liked the video. Thanks as always for watching.